welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, April the 3rd, year 2020. What is it? 21 years?
2019.
2019. Jesus! Oh my God, I'm so confused. Show number 1207. I am Shawn King. The beautiful woman next to me is
Melissa King.
We are sick. Sorry. We've been sick for 2 weeks now. We're not having any fun, as you'll hear. Sorry if you'll hear sick noises. We apologize. We're sorry. We're sick. What are you going to do? On tonight's show, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple at The Loop at loopinsight.com about all the Apple announcements. Apple announced a bunch of things, although we really can't use a bunch of them. A couple weeks ago at their Apple special event, we'll talk about what that event was like. Jim was there. Let's talk to him about the vibe in the room, as well as the services Apple has announced, and whether or not it's something that we, you, I, us, them, him, we're actually going to want to use. We're also going to talk a little bit, briefly, the 25th anniversary of Your Mac Life. Actually, no, 25th anniversary of me. I always hate bringing it on me like that. 25th anniversary of me, for lack of a better way of describing it, starting broadcasting on the internet for Apple stuff. I was the very first person to ever do a broadcast on the internet focused on Apple. It eventually became a podcast, but it wasn't podcasting at the time. It wasn't until a few years later that it actually became the word podcasting, and I started it off as a way of talking to my consulting clients all at once. I'd always been told that I had a good voice, although I have a face for radio. And and he lost my boarding pass. Will you stop? We'll get to the boarding pass story later. Jesus. And so I thought, well, I'd just record my voice and then put it on the
Sorry.
And put it on this new internet thing, because the World Wide Web had only started 5 years before. And then send an email, this new stuff called email, out to all my clients, and they can all listen at the same time. And so we did that. There was a guy I was working with, an audio engineer. It was a Unix guy. He wasn't even a Mac guy. He was a Unix guy who did the audio for me. And after about doing this for 3 or 4 months, I get an email from somebody in England who said, hey, have you thought about this, this, and this? And it was like, yeah, thanks. So who are you? You're not one of my clients? Well, it turned out that one of my clients had sent the link to the audio file to this guy in England, a friend of his in England. And that's when we both, Adam Clark was the original host of the show, both Adam and I went, hey, wait a minute. People around the world can listen to this. And that sort of set off the light bulb in our head that we could do an actual show about Apple. At the time, in 1994, Apple was in the midst of its troubles. Lousy products, lousy services, lousy management. It was a company that was on the verge, and got even closer to the verge, of disappearing. There was time for you young folks, not you young folks, holy crap, I can't believe I just said that, for you younger members of the audience, that Apple was this close to getting bought by IBM, by Sun Microsystems, by Oracle, by any number of companies. Apple could have been bought with the money it had in the bank because it was so being poorly managed. And so I thought I'd do this show to give a little bit of positive news. The only stuff you ever heard about Apple was all negative stuff. So I wanted to do some positive stuff. And so that's when we got started, was Adam and I doing that. And then we both got laid off at the ISP we were working at. And so we started doing it in Adam's apartment, literally in his living room. Then after that, someone invited us to work out of their offices in downtown Vancouver, which was kind of cool. The biggest, funniest part about that was that at the time we were doing a lot of segments, and the segments were always 14 and a half minutes long. We had a timer that said the segment had to be 14 and a half minutes long, because every 15 minutes, for those of you who have been to Vancouver and who have ever been down in the Gastown area of Vancouver, every 15 minutes, the steam clock went off. And our offices were right above the steam clock, so you could have heard it on the microphones. So we had to make sure we were in commercial break every 14 and a half minutes. So then we started doing that, and then a guy out in White Rock, if you don't know Vancouver, it doesn't matter, but he was outside of town, said, hey, come do the show in our studio out there. I was like, okay. We picked up a new co-host at the time, a lovely young lady named Hillary Percy. Hillary actually works for Apple now in Paris. She's or London, one of the two. She's living over there. Was the co-host. Then Mark and I got into a beef over whether or not we were going to run a subscription service. Ironically enough, we kind of are now, but at the time, he wanted to make the whole show a subscription service. You paid to listen to the show. I never liked that. The Listeners Club, MacMan points out. I hated that idea. I had no problem people subscribing and getting additional content or a T-shirt or something like that. But for the actual show itself, I said, no, we wouldn't do that. Mark wouldn't agree with me, so I said, well, bye, I'm leaving. And just coincidentally at the same time, Paul Griffin Technology down in Nashville, Tennessee, said, you're having trouble in Canada. Why don't you come to Nashville? I went, okay. At the time, it was not a problem for me to move. So I went and moved to Nashville. Had a great time in Nashville. That's when I met Jay Curtis. And Jay was the second best co-host I ever had.
You can say it was the best. I don't mind. I mean, I'm not a very good co-host. I just kind of am here.
Okay, how about this? Jay was the second prettiest co-host I ever had.
Okay.
He was the second shortest, too, now I think about it. I'm teasing. So Jay and I did the show for years in Nashville. Had a great time in Nashville. Went to Paris together several times. Jay and I had a great time together. Then we went to it and moved to Connecticut, and that was a disaster for any number of reasons. And then sort of bounced around Pittsburgh, and then Portland, Oregon, and then Canmore, Alberta, then Surrey, British Columbia, and then Chilliwack, British Columbia, then Maple Ridge, and then here to Gibsons, little tiny, cute little Gibsons. That's the sort of the history of Your Mac Life. It was called Mac Show. I don't remember the name of I think the original name of the show was Apple Talk, because that was a networking protocol back in the day where you had the way you could hook up two computers together was this thing called Apple Talk. I know I did get an email from someone at Apple going, no, you can't call it that. So I think we changed it to the Mac Show, and it was the Mac Show Live, and then it was Your Mac Life, and now it's the Your Mac Life Show. It's been Your Mac Life Show for YourMacLifeShow.com for in 2002, so 17 years. MacMan says, I have the first YML somewhere. Dude, if you can find that and send it to me, I'd love to hear that, because I never listened to the show. I still don't listen to the show. Every now and then, I might listen to a bit of it, but I've never listened to the full show all the way through. I'd love to hear what that first show sounded like. It probably like most things, probably crap. I don't know what the future's going to hold. I don't know if the future holds anything for Your Mac Life. It's been 25 years. It's not, frankly, I'll tell you, it's not the success I had hoped it was going to be all those years ago, even 10 years ago. It is not nearly as successful as I had hoped it would be. It doesn't make the money it used to. When we were doing it in White Rock, we had a staff of 6 that we paid, that we traveled to New York and San Francisco and all over. That was in the days before the first internet bubble burst, and advertising dollars were hand over fist. They were throwing money at people, and we were lucky to be the only professional, ostensibly professional sounding broadcast out there. Now the market is fragmented so much. Advertising revenues are in the toilet. Back in the day, you could get ads from people by walking up to them at a Macworld Expo and going, hey, I'm Shawn King. You want to do a podcast ad? Sure. We'll send you the check. Now you can't do that. You need an ad sales exec, and you don't have the money to pay that person. So the key has always been, do I enjoy doing the show? And I've always said that I never enjoyed doing it by myself. Whenever I've had to do this show by myself for whatever circumstances, I've never enjoyed it. I've never enjoyed just sitting here talking to myself for 2 hours, hour and a half. It's funny, those original shows were upwards of 2.5, 3 hours long, and I would do 6, 7 interviews a week with people. Now I haven't done an interview in probably 6 months. So that sort of activity has tailed off a lot. We sometimes just don't have the energy to do the show anymore because of real life. I've got a beautiful wife and a beautiful son, stepsons, and other things that take up our time. Maybe it's just maturing out of the industry for me. I don't know. I would not be able to say that we'll be here for the 30th anniversary. I don't know that for sure. But it is what it is. If it ends anytime soon, it's was an interesting adventure. We'll keep doing it as long as it's still fun for Melissa and I. But that's the key. It's always got to be fun.
It would be good if we could upgrade and do more things, but it just doesn't bring in the revenue that I think you deserve.
I've always wanted to. The best time we had was when, again, we were in White Rock, because that was a professional studio. The guy who had that studio was a Juno Award-winning audio guy. Junos are Canada's version of the Grammys. So this guy knew his stuff. He had a beautiful studio with gorgeous microphones. I was speaking to a $5,000 Neumann microphone. Oh, it was great. But that was the only time we ever had enough money to build a studio the way I wanted to have a studio built. We've been putting this thing together now that was 5 years. So for 20 years with spit and toilet paper, never having had the budget to do the kind of things that we wanted to do to make it look good, to have, we're doing it in our home, so we can't put up and install professional lights, for example, because people don't want that kind of stuff in their homes. Professional mic stands, professional microphones, all that kind of stuff. It all costs money. It'd be great to have.
Well, I saw a piece of that when we visited my friend's radio studio in Australia, and I realized what these studios looked like. And as soon as Shawn walked into this room, and this gentleman, my friend Kerry, has worked for this radio station for a very long time, and this man met Shawn and went, "Whoa, that's a voice for radio." Yep. Straight away, he said. And then Shawn looked over at the microphone in the next studio and started drooling. And he said, "Can I go look at the microphone?"
Yeah, that's right. MacBan says, "You didn't notice I was wearing my YML Charter listener shirt on Friday." I did notice. I just didn't say anything. I meant to say something. I was like, "Hey, it's a cool T-shirt." I did notice, MacBan, but I'm sorry, we were doing other things. I forgot to say. MacMan, is Ian still number one? No, Ian's not still number one. Ian drove me nuts because as friends, I loved Ian, but he would never say, because at the time he was involved in marketing, and he was always afraid of saying something controversial and getting in trouble with his marketing partners or things like that. Ian would say stuff off camera that he would never say on camera, which always pissed me off. We'd be sitting around and he'd go, "Arr, arr, arr," and I'd say, "So Ian, what about this?" "Oh no, it's fine." I'm like, "No, dude, no, you just said they were jerks, So I've always had Ian and Jay were certainly the two best looking co-hosts, male co-hosts I've had. They were handsome young men. And Jay is now working in San Francisco. He's working for I think it's a vape company. He's back on his motorcycle and
looking for a vape company.
Yeah, electronic cigarette company.
Doing what?
Product design.
Oh,
kind of cool. Good for him.
Interesting.
Monty's pro audio gear is not cheap. It's not trivial to care and feed. Exactly. Yeah. MacMan says, I think some of it's Apple's own success. There's so much more Apple coverage than when you started. I don't know if that's it. There's more Apple products. There's certainly more people covering Apple. Part of the problem is that I'm just burned out on. I no longer am interested in interviewing the same people over and over again. For a lot of the podcasts that are out there, it's internet circle jerk. Gruber interviews Jason Snell, who interviews John Moltz, who interviews Jason Snell, who interviews Gruber. It just goes around. It's all the talking heads just talking amongst themselves. And there's no new voices I want to talk to or listen to, for that matter. It's, in myself included, for the most part, it's still the same old white guys who were doing it 20 years ago.
White guys club.
And they're not interesting, frankly. There's one of the problems I've always had with podcasting, the Twit network exactly, is it's very incestuous. Those people will not let anyone else in their little circle group, and I pissed every one of them off. So therefore, they're never going to invite me to participate in their little party, and because they just talk amongst themselves, I don't find them interesting.
It's boring.
The other problem is, just because you have a voice doesn't mean you should be using it in this way. A lot of them have voices. The literal physical sound of their voices are not good. They don't know how to speak properly. They don't know how to enunciate. They don't know how to entertain an audience. Their voices entertain themselves, but they're not very good at entertaining their audience. And hopefully that's something I've always been able to do is with my life in general and all the screw ups that I've gone through, but also just us talking about things, we've been entertaining. That's always been my goal from the day I started. I want to entertain people, and hopefully that continues. Later on the show, we're going to be talking about our Lisbon trip. We just got back on Sunday. We were there for 10 days, had an amazing time. Show you guys some photos in the Starting Point Photography segment of our Lisbon trip. But up next, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. This is your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. Thank you guys very much for joining me here this Wednesday evening. Sorry for the delay there. I couldn't find my lightning cable dongle, so we can talk to the handsome and talented Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim, how you doing?
Yeah, don't try that shit. After all the swearing I just heard in the last 2 minutes, holy shit. I grew up in a Navy town. I haven't heard sailors swear like that. Yeah.
There's sometimes you really hate Apple, and this is one of them, because this goddamn dongle you need for the lightning cable, we packed it for Lisbon, and when we came back, I didn't unpack it, and I was panicking trying to find it. So, oh my God.
So how was your trip to Lisbon?
Lisbon, have you ever been to Lisbon?
I have not.
If you want to go to a wonderfully, very interesting place, food-wise, I don't think you'd like it. I don't think you'd like the food in Lisbon, but the scenery, the history, the light, the color.
I would love that.
Except for the fact, now I don't know how much of a walker you still are. Remember we talked about this years ago with your Apple Watch. Yeah. You're going to walk a lot, and you're going to walk up a lot of hills.
Oh, that would hurt my knees badly.
Dude, you have no idea how sore I was walking up those hills. But when you get to the top of those hills, you get some amazing, beautiful views. It's a lovely, wonderful city, and I definitely want to go back.
So have you posted – I saw some of your posts on Instagram, but did you post pictures anywhere else that we can see them? Or?
Instagram and Twitter was where I was doing the posting while I was there. I just finished editing a bunch of pictures today. They'll get posted up tomorrow on one of the sites, and then there'll be video hopefully coming by the week. Because I took my drone with me to Lisbon. I got some interesting drone shots too. I couldn't get all the drone shots I had envisioned, but I got some good ones. It's a beautiful city.
Well, I hope you'll post a summary on the Loop.
Oh yeah,
just to let people see the photos and everything.
I'd love to. That'd be great. Thanks very much. Although, as Dave D points out, you may not want to go to Lisbon. They don't seem to have a lot of Heineken.
Huh? What?
They don't seem to have a lot of Heineken in Lisbon.
Why not? They're not that far away.
That's right. That's right. The factory's just just a couple of countries over.
I don't get it.
There was that one restaurant that we stopped in that had Heineken on the menu, but that was the only place I saw Heineken on a bar menu.
Well, that's the only place I'd be. What was it, a McDonald's or something?
No, it was a place that served octopus.
Oh, okay. So I'll bring food and order beer.
That's right. Yeah, you're not a very adventurous eater, so I think you'd be okay in Portugal.
Well, I don't know.
Let's talk about Apple's special event of a couple of weeks ago. You were there in the room. Was there a different vibe for this particular event, if only because of the celebrities that you saw in the audience?
There really wasn't. I think that the majority of the people in the room that go to these things are expecting a certain thing. And, that certain thing is all about the products. So the celebrities in the room, I mean, there could have been a few of the reporters that were focused on that, but, from publications like Variety or, stuff like that. But the rest of us were focused on the announcements and, so I didn't find the vibe very different. And in actual fact, you couldn't see the celebrities, so they were all backstage, and there were a few that were out front. I understand, but still, you couldn't see them either.
Yeah. Do you think that because it was obviously a services-oriented event, and Apple said that right at the top, Tim Cook said that from the very beginning, this was going to be focused on services, that might have put a damper on the energy of the event, knowing that it was just going to be no hardware, no things that were tangible?
I don't think so. I mean, we're all looking for Apple to kind of be. Services aren't the next thing, but Apple has made it very clear that they're very serious about services.
Yes.
So. We're all interested to see where they're going. The gaming arcade. I'm not a gamer, could care less about gaming, but that showed me that they're very serious about services. However much money they want for it, that showed me that they're serious about it.
And keep in mind, I don't think a lot of folks realize this. I posted this up on the Inside Apple newsletter today. While the iPhone is the largest segment of Apple's revenue, around 62% of the revenue comes from the iPhone, the next largest segment isn't the Macintosh, isn't the Apple Watch. It's services at almost 10% of Apple's business. And this is a business that it wasn't really even a line item up until maybe 5 years ago. So it's becoming a much greater import to the company than I think a lot of people realize. We keep thinking of them as just a hardware company, just a software company. They're wanting to become a services company as well, correct?
Well, I mean, they are a services company. When years ago, you talked about 5 years ago, look back even farther, 10, 15 years ago, services for Apple was .Mac.
Yes.
That was services.
Yep, that's right.
So whatever they brought in services, you could just take out in the line item of their quarterly call and say, okay, .Mac made this much. Because that's the only service they had. Well, now they have Apple Music as services. They have, their .Mac type services or me.com service or whatever the hell it is. They have a lot of things that are in services now. And now you're going to add in subscriptions and you're going to add in all of this other stuff that come under services. Yep. And they're making billions of dollars a quarter on services.
There was a lot of things rumored before this event. Most of the rumors were true to varying degrees. Let's talk about what Apple actually announced in what I would say is the order of importance. First of all, Apple Arcade, an interesting idea for a subscription service for a company that hasn't been known as a gaming company. Apple has done things that are gamer unfriendly. The iPhone, as Cook said, is the largest gaming platform in the world right now. Do you think Apple Arcade is going to get more people playing games?
Oh, I don't know if it's about getting more people playing games. I think this is a way for people to get a lot of games that they wouldn't otherwise be able to get and not have to spend any more money. So let's just assume Apple charges $10 because that seems to be the going rate for subscriptions is $10. If you have $10, you can subscribe to almost anything.
Yeah, that's right.
So let's assume that for now. So a parent with a child or two children, once they want to play games, obviously. Well, you can keep buying or downloading the free ones, and they keep clicking the ads and all that kind of stuff. Yep. Or you can keep buying $1.99, say $2 games. Or you can subscribe to Arcade and just be done with it.
Yeah.
There's 100 games in there for you. Go play. Let Mom and I do our thing. You go play games. And I think it's going to be hugely successful. And I'm saying this as a non-gamer.
Yeah, same here.
I mean, I used to play like Quake and Doom and Medal of Honor. And, during those times I was a gamer. I'm not a gamer. But so I'm looking at this from a completely different perspective than gamers are. I'm looking at this as a moneymaker, and I think it's going to be a huge moneymaker for them.
Now, see, I don't think it's going to be a huge moneymaker. I think it is obviously going to make money for them, but they are footing the bill for a lot of this game development from these companies. Apple has to do that. They've got to prime the pump to a certain degree. The issue is going to be it's a very narrow, small pool of gamers. This is not going to be available on Windows. It's not going to be available on Android. So because
Hold on now.
What?
Hold on.
What?
What are the most popular apps on the App Store? Games.
Games, yes.
They said that.
Yes.
Games. So that's why they're going to make a ton of money on this.
Okay, all right.
Because parents are going to look at this and say, $10 a month, and the kids will just go play.
Yep.
I'm in. Regardless, fine. And don't forget, there's a billion devices out there.
I think the issue is going to be the issue Apple's every platform has is the length and breadth of the games. You've got to have the games that people want to play. It doesn't matter what it costs if the games there aren't ones that are compelling. I like the idea that these games are going to be able to be played on various platforms and follow you around, kind of. So if you're at the airport and you're playing on your iPad and then you come back home and play on your Mac, the game's going to pick up where left off. That's kind of cool. I really like that.
That is very cool. And that's an Apple type of thing,
Yep.
That's very cool.
It's going to be. I think this is going to be not a huge hit, but I think it's certainly going to be a hit for Apple. Apple Card was another rumored thing that came true. Was the Apple Card announcement, any of the details of it particularly surprising or exciting to you?
Just as a side here, I'm standing outside the bar under a sign that says "Do not smoke in this area." Oops.
I love standing under those signs and smoking.
Yeah. So the Apple Card was actually, I thought, one of the better announcements of the whole event.
Yeah.
Because when people ask me about, Apple doing a credit card, I was like, whatever. Yeah. Everybody does a credit card, so whatever. But when the details, the official details came out, and you realize that this is for the iPhone, and, they give you this titanium card, and it's etched, and it's all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's all very, very cool. Very cool. Very cool. I love it. I think it's really good. And the billing where it actually puts the store and not,
yeah.
That's cool. I mean, there's so many cool things about the Apple Card that this is the new status symbol. Do you have a titanium card with no number on it?
That's right. And then
I do.
And then the next one they'll have the black titanium card and the gold titanium card. I think part of it, of my limited excitement over the Apple Card, is the knowledge that we're not going to get it here in Canada for a very long time, if at all. Some of the things that Apple said about it were a little marketing weenie, like low interest rates. As we found out, the interest rates are going to be running from 13 to 24%. That's not low. Apple could have done much better and much lower to help people out.
But let's be honest here for a minute. In Canada, you're still trading in goats and chickens. So, when you talk about a credit card, that's a lot different than what the rest of the world sees. I mean, when you walk into a grocery store in Canada, you say, "I'll give you 3 beaver pelts for what's in the cart." Let's be honest. And I've got a moose antler.
What can I get for this moose antler? It's fresh. But still, all that having been said, I don't think that there's enough there to convince people who aren't hardcore Mac users or Mac fans to give up their present credit card. For example, you and I talked about this a couple weeks ago when we first started talking about the Apple Card. One of the things that our Visa card does is has price protection, so that have purchase protection. So and it happened. I lost the drone within 90 days, and I called up Visa and said, "Lost drone." They said, "Okay, we'll send you $2,500. This Apple Card does not have that service.
How do you know?
Because I've read the stuff about Apple Card. Come on, dude.
Well, you read too much.
This card,
I didn't know it didn't have that. It should have that.
Yes, exactly. It's one of those things that most Visa and MasterCards already have, is this kind of price protection. There's also, on our CIBC Visa, we get travel protection, we get trip interruption protection. There's a bunch of other protections that our Visa card provides us. The Apple Card isn't going to provide. The daily cash thing is kind of cute, but you're going to get 14 cents each day. Big deal, you know?
Okay, but hold on. I actually thought that the daily cash was better than what the other cards offer, because they offer you, you're going to get 25,000 points. But what do you get for that? You know, you can't even buy coffee for that.
Yes, I agree with you on that.
I think all of the points things are just ridiculous.
I agree.
Because you can accumulate points, which I've done before on airline ones, and then they change.
Yep.
Well, you know, it's no longer 15,000 points that gets you a flight. It's 30,000 points. So all of a sudden you lose half of your incentive there. And, well, that's not cool.
Yeah. Yeah,
so
I certainly agree with you on that. And I don't have a credit card that's got a reward system. I think that's ridiculous. I like a points system. I like the cashback rewards. But the cashback rewards, where are we? Have you moved? It's getting really loud all of a sudden.
I'm sorry. It's the bar started to fill. I'm outside of the bar, actually.
Jeez.
I know. I'm about to go in and start beating some millennial ass here.
So for example, on our CIBC card, again, we're using that as an example, we get 4% cash back on gas and groceries. That's a significant amount of money. And we've only had this card. We've only had this card for 2 or 3 months, and we've already amassed over $200 in cash back on gas and groceries. The two things we use the card the most for. So what I'm saying is, overall, my point is that it doesn't seem like Apple, as revolutionary as they want to make this seem, it's kind of middle of the road when it comes to credit card stuff. The security aspect of it is very cool. The idea that it's on your iPhone, in your Apple Wallet. There's a whole bunch of security features there that I really, really like. But as a card itself, I don't know if it's enough to get people to dump their present credit cards and use the Apple Card. Do you think you would dump it?
I don't see this as people dumping a card to get an Apple Card. I think people will get an Apple Card in addition to what they have.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
And they'll use that for online purchases, or they'll use it for, the purchases that they already make at Apple Pay enabled things. I don't see this as, okay, you've got a card that you really like, and you're going to call Visa and say, hey, screw you, I'm getting an Apple Card. No, I don't see. But I don't think that that's what it's for right now. I really don't.
Yeah, I certainly do like the idea that Apple is doing this, if only because maybe it's going to wake up the credit card industry in general and have the rest of them, the Visas and MasterCards, American Express, go, hey, we have to do more for our customers because we might lose them to Apple. So maybe Visa comes out next year with a system for daily cash back. Maybe MasterCard does the same thing for their customers. So I think this will help push the industry forward.
I really like the daily cash back. Honestly, points mean nothing to me because the company can change what the points do at any time, and we've seen it happen. I mean, I've had credit cards where it's happened, and I don't like losing half of what I was saving up for because the company decided that as of March the 1st, this is it. This is what's going to happen. Well, they're basically saying F you to everybody.
Yep, that's right. I agree.
Or even worse, they take it away. It's only good for a year and then you lose it.
Yep, that's right.
Well, wait a minute now. I have 100,000 points and I don't want to go on vacation for 6 more months, and that's right. 4 flights, and you're going to take it away? I just don't like stuff like that.
Yeah, that's why when we got a credit card, we went for a credit card that gave cash back and not reward points. And the reward point systems are just absolutely ridiculous. You have literally with one of the credit cards that we looked at, the reward points said you could get a new Canon DSLR for 600,000 reward points, and the reward points were 1-to-1. So you had to literally spend $600,000 to get a $1,000 camera. Screw you.
Right. Yeah.
Let's move on to the next, the third big announcement, Apple News Plus. Have you had a chance to play around with Apple News Plus yet?
I have.
I think you did write an article on the Loop about it. What are your impressions so far?
So here's the thing. The first day when I got back home and I wrote about Apple News Plus, Jesus Christ, I'm going to kill somebody soon.
Yeah, it's a...
I am. Okay, so Apple News Plus, when I first got home, I thought, okay, I already have a subscription to the Wall Street Journal. I have a subscription to a New York Times. And Apple News Plus, magazines, I stopped reading magazines years ago.
Yeah, same here.
So what do I need with Apple News Plus? And that was my takeaway from the event.
Yep.
And then I subscribed to Apple News Plus because why not?
Yep.
It's what I do.
It's free.
And I actually started to like it within a couple of days. And here's why. I was reading articles that interested me instead of magazines that interested me.
Yeah.
If what Apple gave me was, here, you can download these 300 magazines, I would not subscribe.
Yeah.
I absolutely would not, because I have no interest in downloading magazines at all. I don't have the time nor the inclination to flip through and try and find out what stories I want.
Yes.
So what Apple did in the Apple News Plus page was bring up stories that I am interested in. So what I found was that I was reading stories in Apple News Plus from magazines, but I wasn't reading multiple stories from the same magazine. I was reading stories from all 300 magazines or, 30 magazines or whatever it was. But those are the stories that I was reading. And they were stories that interested me. And the thing about magazines, and you know this better than anybody because you read more than anybody I know, when those stories are typically more in-depth than a news story.
Yes.
You read a National Geographic story, it goes on for pages. It's very in-depth.
Yes.
The photography is amazing. Everything is amazing. And one of the things that got me about this is when I listen to podcasts or read at night, I never listen or read about tech. It's all the other things.
Yeah.
And that's what I got with Apple News Plus. So I like it.
I think it's going to be really interesting to see where this goes in the long run. I was an initial user of Texture, even before it was called Texture. And like you, I got out of the regular habit of reading magazines probably 10, 12 years ago that I stopped subscribing to magazines. And I liked the idea of Texture. The problem at that time was finding time to read the magazines that were of interest to you, because then you had to flip through each individual magazine. So your comment about being able to browse articles is very interesting. I haven't yet done that. For me, it's been about the actual magazines itself. It's going to be interesting to see how Apple broadens this, because even though I am an inveterate reader, as you say, when I went and looked at the magazines they had, there weren't a lot of magazines that I personally would sit down with an iPad and read the magazines or read the list of stories from. I'm not a guy who's going to read Fast Company or People Magazine or GQ, that kind of stuff. So as it becomes more successful, and I think it will be successful, and Apple adds more magazines, That's what's going to be really interesting to me. And the thing that surprised me most was Apple doing this with a family sharing thing for one price.
Yeah.
I was really
I
impressed with that because Apple could have very easily, because they've already got family sharing where they say you pay us X numbers of dollars more and you can share this stuff. Apple's just saying, no, $10, everyone in your house can read magazines separately, so your son can read different magazines from your wife, different magazines from you. I was very impressed by that aspect of it.
Yeah, me too. I think that they did this right, and the way that you can actually read articles, I would be surprised if you didn't find articles that you like to read.
Yeah, as opposed to whole magazines,
As opposed to whole magazines, because that's how I'm reading it right now. And, the articles that I'm reading are so varied. There are articles on architecture or, National Geographic, the lost cities, or, they're basically everything but tech.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what I'm reading on Apple News Plus, and I know that there's quality journalism there, and I enjoy it. I really do enjoy reading those types of things.
How they pull this off, it's already been said that they had 200,000 subscribers in the first 48 hours. I wouldn't read a whole lot into that. That's free. Everyone's going to sign up for it. But I will guess they're going to keep at least half of those subscribers 31 days from now, and then build on that going forward as they start advertising, as they start promoting and marketing this kind of stuff. Do you think at some point in, say, the next year, the New York Times will jump on board Apple News Plus?
I don't know. I mean, the New York Times is standing firm on what they believe, as is, I believe it's the Washington Post.
Yes.
They're going to do what they're going to do. I mean, I don't know, nor do I care, because I have subscription anyway. So, the gamble for the Wall Street Journal is, can we get people interested in our content to have them subscribe to the app?
Yeah.
That's the gamble they're taking. And, they're giving away a curated list of articles to Apple to put in the store. You can't get all of the Wall Street Journal. So, that's the gamble that they're taking right now, and I think it's a worthwhile gamble for them. What do they have to lose? If somebody, like an avid reader like you or me, comes up and says, well, every time I go through Apple News Plus, I keep reading these articles from the Wall Street Journal. Well, then maybe I should subscribe to it. Then that's a good thing.
The the president of the New York Times made a really interesting point, and you kind of mentioned it when you talked about going through the articles. The New York Times says they're not involved because they don't want to be jumbled in with everybody else. They don't want to be caught up in the mess of stories where you're reading a story but you don't know where that story is from. The New York Times is saying that their branding is more important to them than being involved in Apple News Plus. And I get that. I understand why they're saying that. Plus, they're making more money, obviously, off of direct subscriptions than they would be off of Apple News Plus. I think they will get involved in some way, shape, or form within the next year, both them and the Washington Post. I think those two organizations are the most important in America right now, arguably some of the most important newspapers in the world. And Apple will find a way to get them into the Apple News umbrella sometime in the next 12 months.
I think it's going to be more what the Wall Street Journal has to say.
You think?
Yeah, if the Wall Street Journal is showing progress, then I think the other two will certainly jump online. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the Journal, the Times, and the Post are probably the three biggest, most respected publications in the U.S.
Yeah.
So, you're going to have to be careful, I think, the Times and the Post, but I think, when you see the limited number of articles that are brought out from them, I don't see where they really have anything to lose with it. I really don't.
Yeah. Finally, the last thing that Apple announced that was the most interesting in not necessarily good ways was the Apple TV Plus. The service has no release date. It's got no numbers attached to it. We don't know how much it's going to cost. We don't know how many shows we're going to get to watch. We don't know. And yet, it was possibly the future of Apple services. Certainly the future of where Apple's going to make the most amount of money on services over the next, say, 5 years is going to be through Apple TV Plus. Were you chagrined or upset or disappointed by the lack of concrete information from Apple about this new service, or do you see this as priming the pump, that this was just marketing and we'll find out soon enough in the fall that what this is going to ding us for?
Well, it's Apple. Obviously, it's good. I was playing with my boobs the whole time they were talking about it.
I did not need that mental image, dude. Come on. Okay, what is wrong with you?
Clearly, I was very. I wasn't upset. I was disappointed in the lack of details that were provided.
Yeah.
I posted on Twitter right before the event started and said, today is all about the details.
Yes.
Because we basically know what Apple is going to do.
Yep.
I mean, we knew Apple News Plus. We knew the video. We know all this stuff. So it's all about details. And we didn't get any details. And yeah, I was disappointed with that. Now, having said that, listening to people like Ron Howard and Spielberg and, all of these people talk about the shows that are coming, yeah, that was very exciting.
Yep.
The fact that they didn't have Jennifer Garner on stage, but she was there, very disappointing. Very, very disappointing. I mean, that was probably the most disappointing part of the whole. Like, I sat in the theater for 4 hours after the event ended, just in case.
Just in case you showed up.
But she was there, and the way that they did the reveal of the shows. That guy from Aquaman, when the lights went out and they came back on, he said, "Surprise!"
Yeah.
That was just hilarious. Yeah. And it was really good. If you look at the shows that they highlighted there, I mean, there was some good content there. And now, not all of those shows are in my wheelhouse. I'm not really a sci-fi guy or anything like that, but some of these shows looked really interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I will watch all of the shows that come out and look at them from, I hope an angle of, production, and were these really good shows or were they just stupid like, Planet of the Apps?
Yeah.
I didn't see anything in the previews that I saw that looked really dumb.
Yeah, agreed.
They looked really good. Now, even the one with Aniston and Reese Witherspoon,
yes,
I thought when I first heard about that show, well, this is dumb. But when I saw the preview, I thought, oh my God,
yep.
that looks really good.
Yep.
So I'm going to watch the shows with an open mind, even though they're not my genre. I mean, I love thrillers and things like that. And we'll see how it goes. But I'm right now, with what they presented, I have no problem with the content, which is really good.
I think the most interesting aspect of this, and I don't know if a lot of folks have come to the realization of this particular thought. I'm not saying this is original to me, but this is not a Netflix competitor. People want to keep bumping Apple TV Plus and Netflix up against. They're not. They're not going after Netflix. They're going after a whole separate audience, this high quality aspect of things. This is not going to be the service where you're going to watch Friends. This is not going to be the service where you're going to watch ZooTube or anything else like that, any filler shows. This is going to be Apple, as they say about news, highly curated, the best of the best that they can find. This is going to be in addition to Netflix. You're not going to cancel your Netflix service to get Apple TV Plus. You're going to have Apple TV Plus alongside of your Netflix service. I think that's what Apple's doing in that regard is brilliant, because it means they can price it at a little under Netflix, say $10 a month, and have people accept it with their other $10 a month things, and still make lots of money on it through the Roku box and the Fire TV and the Apple TV and all those other kind of things. I don't think this is going to be a big profit center for Apple, at least initially, but I don't see it as a Netflix competitor either. Do you?
Well, you see, here's the thing. I think that, and this is why the lack of details was so disappointing, is because how much are they going to charge for it? Is there going to be a bundle with Apple Music? Is there going to be family viewing? I mean, because we're all subscription goats at this point. You know, you have Hulu, you have Amazon Prime, you have Netflix, and then, here's another subscription. Yep. Well, I don't want another subscription.
Yep, I agree.
And, the Apple TV app will show some things in Netflix, but not play them. Yep. And, it's just like, wow, I don't want any more subscriptions. Yep. But if Apple comes out and says, well, here's a bundle and you can have everything, and this is how much it's going to cost, then you kind of say, well, okay, if it's a few bucks a month and, that's what's extra, then fine, whatever. It's like your kids. They want to play games and you don't want to spend $2 or $3 every time. Fine. Here's $10. Just let them play 100 games. Yeah. So that's where the disappointment comes in as far as the TV goes, because you can't make a decision one way or another.
I think Apple's going to let us stew about this stuff through the summer, and then in the late summer, early fall, come out with alongside whatever other new products they're going to announce in that time frame, with the pricing of these. I think I get the sense the pricing is going to be lower than what we expect. A lot of folks were talking about this bundle being $50 a month or $60 a month. I don't see it being that high.
I don't think so. That seems awfully high.
I think you'll be able to get Apple News Plus, Arcade, and Apple TV Plus for, I'm going to say, $20 a month, $19.99 US a month. Will get you the whole package. That's my prediction.
How much?
$19.95.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see. Exactly. And we'll wrap this up, this segment of the show up. Air Power was finally killed. We all knew it was happening. We all knew it was going to happen. Was this a huge embarrassment, as some folks have said, or was this more of a meh kind of thing to you?
It was a disappointment for me, because I would have loved to have had that. But I don't think it's an embarrassment. I mean, by all accounts, it's physics.
Yes.
I mean, you can't be embarrassed by physics.
Well, you can be if you promised something 2 years ago and don't deliver it and didn't mention it. I think that's where the embarrassment comes from Apple's point of view, is that they announced this thing in September 2017, and then every opportunity they had to talk about it again, they never said a word. So they let the tension build. Instead of pricking that little bubble with a pin and going, you know what, we're having some problems, please be patient with us. They let us stew in our own juices on this, and then when they eventually did cancel it, it became more of an embarrassment than it actually needed to be. I don't think it's a huge embarrassment at all. I think it's just a minor annoyance, and I feel bad for all, as someone said on Twitter, you feel bad for all those folks who worked hard at trying to bring the Air Power to market, the engineers and the marketing folks and all those kind of people. But overall, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it's any big deal at all that Apple has a product that they canceled.
Well, I mean, if you look at what all of the things that Apple has done over the years, engineering wise,
yep.
and then look, and you're amazed that they could do that, and then look at this and figure that they can't do it. Well, then you know it's a difficult problem to solve.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, no one else has solved the problem either. Some people seem to think that this is an easy problem to solve, but it's viciously difficult. If anyone who uses any kind of power mat, any kind of charger, I think it's not Q charger, it's Shy charger, QI, the standard. I can't remember what it is. I know.
Q, isn't it?
No, it's not Q. It's not Q. My friend Lauren Finkelstein corrected me on that when I first said it. I knew I was saying it wrong. But anyway, the standard, your device has to be placed on your charging mat, pad, stand, whatever it might be, in the exact right position. I've got one here that I use on a regular basis, and I like this little stand, but if I don't put my iPhone on it exactly in the right spot, it won't charge. So Apple was trying to solve this problem by saying, well, you'll just be able to throw anything on there, your AirPods and your Apple Watch and your iPhone, just whatever you wanted to do, and it will charge. Turned out that was a hell of a lot more difficult. Now, that being the case, I think someone at Apple is going to get fired over this. If only because somebody at Apple convinced Tim Cook that this was an engineering problem they could solve, and they never did solve the engineering problem of it. That's what
I mean, let's be honest. It was a good idea.
Yeah. Oh, agreed. Absolutely.
You know, I mean, there's no doubt that it was a good idea. And, of course, we would have loved to have had that.
Yep.
But, you know, it's one of those situations where we don't have it. And it's not.
Sorry, I lost you there, Jim. You still there?
I'm still here.
Okay, sorry. No, it just broke up. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a company-ending disaster, as some folks are trying to portray this, nor is it a sign of the future of Apple. I think this is one thing where they overstepped. They reached higher than they could and found out that it wasn't going to work. The issue I have with it is Apple not saying anything for 2 years and causing themselves their own embarrassment on this one. I had no sympathy for Apple with that in that regard, but overall, I think this is a tempest in a teapot.
No, I think it is too, and there's again when I look at this, I look at holy shit. If those engineers couldn't fix that problem, I don't think anybody.
Yeah, no kidding. That's right. Yeah,
you know,
I don't.
They fixed some incredibly hard problems.
Yep. Yeah, if Apple can't do it, I don't think anyone, and no one else has done it up to this point either. Keep that in mind, folks. Apple announced the AirPower 2 years ago, and normally, if you did that, some Chinese knockoff would have had a dozen of those things out in the market by now. It's been 2 years. Why hasn't anyone else come up with? Even if no one else had thought up the idea until Apple announced it 2 years ago, by now someone else should have a charging mat similar to the AirPower. No one has. Guess why? Because it can't be done, at least not with today's technology.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Folks, we're talking to Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. He's here each and every week. He has his own podcast available on the iTunes store. It's called The Dalrymple Report. You know, so listen to it on loopinsight.com. Jim, thanks very much for doing this, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon. See ya.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks very much to Jim for being it, even though he's in a bar somewhere, a lot of noise. My apologies. I can't get Jim to not go to a bar. See, that's part of the problem. I don't have any money to pay Jim to say, dude, just stay under the bridge for the half hour that I'm talking to you on Wednesday nights, and then you can go to the bar. Here's $50. You know, if I could do that, everything would be just fine. But I don't have any money to pay him, so he goes to a bar. Sometimes he's loud, sometimes he's not. What are your thoughts on Apple's announcements on Apple TV Plus, on Arcade, on News Plus, on the Apple Card? Are you interested in these devices, in these systems, in these services? Is this something you're looking forward to? Do you have your own concerns about them? Please, as always, send us emails to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. We'd love to hear from you guys with regards to that. Coming up next after this break, we're going to talk about our trip to Lisbon, which we just got back from, and show you some pictures of that. All that and more coming up. This is Your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. Thank you guys very much for joining us here this Wednesday evening. We're powering through. Even though Melissa and I are we would much rather be in bed.
I would like very much to be in bed,
but
that's
sleeping,
okay.
Just napping, just in bed.
Mr. King fell asleep in front of the TV. Like, he never does that. Never. And I could feel him, and I looked over. I thought, wow.
Last night, yeah.
Yeah.
But we were also watching Twilight Zone. It was kind of boring.
It was awful.
Yeah, that was disappointing. Anyway, as we mentioned, we back on Sunday from as cities go, I'd say Lisbon, Portugal is now moved in my top 5.
It is a beautiful city.
My hometown of Halifax, Florence, Italy, New York City, because it's just New York City, Lisbon, and I think my top 4. Top 4. Beautiful city, amazing light. If you're a photographer, you know about the light in Tuscany in central Italy. There's something about the light in Tuscany that gives you beautiful photography. It's the same in Lisbon. In the sunlight, even even in the middle of the day, you can still find good light But in the mornings and the evenings, you got spectacular lights. So if you're a photographer, it's beautiful. There are wonderful. Oh, hang on, let's just start over again. I didn't do this starting point photography thing. Hang on. Wait, just shh. Everyone be quiet. I'll add something to this. I'm not sure what.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I know you don't.
God.
Screw it. I'm not going to do it. Just hell with it. So
the starting point have like a musical theme now?
No, not really. But I usually start it off as if it's a separate segment of the show, and I didn't this time, so I kind of screwed it up.
Oh,
but I just don't care. I'm sorry, I just don't care. Monty, you're sick. You get a pass.
Yeah.
So let me turn off the music too. Stop at the music. So the other thing about Lisbon is that it feels both simultaneously new and very, very old. Do you agree with me on that? There's a lot of modern things about Lisbon, but then you turn a corner and you see this beautiful old building or old facade or old arch or old statue or whatever it was. A lot of modern amenities, an amazing amount of restaurants. Just an absolute mind-boggling number of restaurants.
I found it predominantly old.
Old, okay.
So, yes. Oh, yes. All of it. A feast for the eyes.
Yeah.
Just the age of it, the charm of it. The Alfalma district, I miss it. I miss the Alfalma district.
We could have spent a lot more time in the Alfalma district just wandering around.
Just unbelievable.
The Alfalma district is the oldest area of Lisbon after the 1755 earthquake. Most of the city was utterly destroyed from an earthquake, a tsunami, and then a firestorm. But the Alfama district on the side of one of the 7 hills of Lisbon remained mostly intact and was built up. But it's also a very working class. Gritty is the wrong word because I didn't feel like it was gritty. But it was definitely a working class neighborhood. You saw a lot of folks walking with groceries and old folks. Things like that. People going about their daily business. But some beautiful visuals of walking around a corner and seeing a great a tree. I got to show you the picture. I got to show you guys some of the pictures of Lisbon that we saw. There were on many occasions where you would go around a corner and you'd literally see this tree in the middle of the street. They built. Hang on, let me get this picture here. They built the neighborhood around the tree.
Well,
these stairs that you see here on the picture, that tree, they could have cut the tree down in order to make the stairs. They didn't. They built the stairs around the tree.
Yeah, no, I think that the tree is as old as everything around it. And all these little places that you see, these are all where people live.
That's right.
These little doorways and every alleyway that you look up, it's just lined in outdoor tables and vibrancy and people and music and smells and very beautiful city. And you have to show people the tiles of the different districts. Charming.
One of the aspects of Lisbon that I didn't expect I knew was going to happen, but I didn't expect to be so charmed by it, was the tiles on the ground.
Oh.
We love the tiles on the buildings. The tiles on the ground, which represented various neighborhoods in Lisbon, were equally as beautiful.
Beautiful.
This one square, I'm not sure what the name of this particular square was, but this square with the wavy tiles on it, that if you looked at it, it was kind of like an optical illusion. If you looked at it, suddenly it looked like the tiles were actual waves that was going up and down. It was really, really cool. Outside the Pastis de Belém, which is one of the custard tart places, one of the famous ones.
Very famous.
They have their name in tile on the
and
on
all
the
of
ground.
these little. So they don't have concrete in Lisbon.
Yes.
In most of the city, the streets are lined in. They actually have statues to commemorate the laying down of these rocks almost, that they put down and they bang them down, and so the footpaths are made up of pieces of this stone.
As MacMan says, those cobble streets are suck to walk on. Yeah, they were difficult.
Some of them, but I found them quite almost soft under my feet in some ways. The feeling of them,
Yeah.
yeah.
This is this picture is a great example of, you just look down a corner and then down this little tiny alleyway. This alleyway is probably no more than 8 feet wide. You couldn't get a car through here, but there's a little restaurant down at the end of this alleyway.
Everywhere.
And there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of restaurants. There was one block we were on that I swear there was at least, and the block was no more than half a regular city block. It must have been 10 restaurants on both sides of the street.
Mm-hmm. And little bars and music coming out of them, and you could just wander around. I loved, because we had to go back, and then Shawn had to work, and we would then go out again in the evening. The wandering around Alfalma at night, the light was a golden yellow, reflecting off all the tiles and the rocks, and I couldn't get enough of that.
The city itself is built, as I said, on 7 hills that very much like Rome in that sense. But actually, Lisbon is older than Rome. And so they have a lot of ways of getting around the city, a lot of it having to do with these stairs. Almost every corner you go around, you'll look up and you see this flight of stairs. And after 4 or 5 days, you're like, oh, shit, more stairs. But...
I didn't think that.
Because you're a mountain goat, okay? You're just you're going up these hills. If you're out of shape, it's a difficult city to walk in. There's no doubt about it. There are a lot of hills, and first of all, I'm out of shape. There's no doubt about that. But I've also got 2 bad knees, which hate going up and down. Walking on flat, I'm okay. I can walk for miles on flat ground. But it's when I have to go up hills and down hills and upstairs and downstairs that my knees start to bother me.
You did pretty well, I thought.
Well, that's the thing, is that because I was practicing in the weeks and months before we went,
yes,
it was not as bad as I was afraid it was going to be. But there is a lot of beautiful views of these hills and stairways with these trees in the middle, which was just so cool and so charming. Typical of many European cities, a lot of the places, especially in the working class neighborhoods, had these gorgeous balconies. There was clothes hanging off of balconies.
Oh, there were people laundry hanging everywhere.
Flower pots, and it's just a wonderful non-touristy vibe in the Alfama district.
Oh.
You really felt you were in a tourist area when you were in the commercial plaza area,
near the Chiado area,
the Baixa area, where we were in. Our hotel was Hotel Borja Chiados. We were in the Chiado area. I say very touristy, but it wasn't very touristy. It was touristy, but it wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't real kitschy as you see in some places.
It's Europe. There are people from all over the world.
Yes, and that was really cool too.
Yeah,
that always cool. Is when you're traveling through Europe. Some wonderful scenes. Again, there's this as Melissa said, this beautiful light that they had with these. What kind of trees were these?
Well, Anne knew. I was not familiar with these trees, so I know that Dave may. Red buds. I don't know if Dave is meaning but so I wasn't familiar with them.
But they're very pretty trees.
Beautiful.
They were all over the city. We really liked these.
Mm-hmm. They had bougainvillea was growing everywhere. What other trees?
This is an example of something I loved about Lisbon is this old worn kind of look to a lot of it, in the sense it wasn't worn as in decrepit or falling down. It was worn just because it was. This is where we live.
Yeah,
we can't be bothered to replaster this.
Oh, it's so old.
But it wasn't bad. Again, the tiles you see on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, they were just absolutely gorgeous. I love as you're being I love the areas of a city where, while you're being a tourist, the people who live there are going with their lives. So this was a walkway, some graffiti there on the left-hand side, and we're walking up to some other place in the Alfama district, and this lovely little old lady is coming down with her cart full of groceries, and so I took a picture of her.
Not a lot of obese people there, because they're walking everywhere.
No. You cannot be obese here. Got this, I think this great shot of this old couple who were hello, who were just sitting there having a conversation. I walked up to them and said, "Hello, I'm from Canada. I'm a photographer. May I take your picture?" And they said, "Sure." and I did. I think that was a nice shot, a nice shot of them. The famous trams, we rode those on several occasions. In particular, the Tram 28. This was the National Cathedral in the background with the Tram 28. It wasn't as much fun as I had hoped it would be. If only because
packed.
It's very surprising to me that Lisbon was so busy in March. I wasn't expecting it to be quite that many people in what we would have thought of as being not the tourist season.
It got busier during the week that we were there. By the end of the 10 days, Shawn and I was going, oh my God, like it got busier. Yes, and I couldn't have stood it any busier than that.
It was, I would definitely not go, I wouldn't go anywhere in Europe in the heat or the height of the summer. March, April, maybe May, depending where you're going, would be my maximum. But I was very surprised at this one, this idea where it was MacMan. I was ready to start killing tourists. Yeah, there was a lot of tourists. And because these tram cars are not that big, you can seat maybe, 15, 20 people, and then another 20 or 30 can stand. But they were determined to put in 60 people on those trams.
Just jam-pack people in.
What's the nuts? They were just, it was uncomfortable.
And there's not much they're very old and wooden inside, so there's not much to kind of hold on to. You're kind of I was holding on to Shawn.
That's right.
Kind of just relying on the fact that you're all in there like sardines.
Yeah, you really can't fall over. because
you're too many people
jammed in there.
It is fun when you get a seat, though, and then it goes through the streets, and it's so close to the walls of either side of the street that if people were walking, you could have reached out and touched their head.
I wonder if Lisbon keeps track of the number of tourists who die because they got hit by a window because they weren't paying attention, and the tram come behind them and smacked them in the back of the head, because they are very close in some sections. I think the funniest one that we had, the funniest incident that Melissa and I had, was we were on the tram coming back from the Geronimo's Monastery.
It was a bus, though. No, we were just on a public bus.
Full-size public bus, double public bus, packed, completely stuffed full. And we're standing by the door, and this old Portuguese woman looked Brazilian, because Portuguese tend to be swarthy Mediterraneans, but then the Brazilians tend to be very dark-skinned. And so this woman looked Brazilian, and she couldn't get on the front of the bus, so she came back to these are the buses that have multiple doors along the side. Came back, and she couldn't get on either. I'm in the way. There's two other women in the way, and we can't move anywhere. And she starts screaming at people.
She's and the bus everyone just ran. She cleared the way. And people just like, holy, she got on, and man, she was a little forced. She had a big scarf on her head. She was hilarious.
She was screaming.
I gave her
at
my
people.
seat, actually, after a while.
Funniest thing was, like, lady, I ain't moving. I've been yelled at by black women before.
I know. Shawn was like, yeah, whatever.
No, I found my spot, lady. I ain't moving. All the white folks went, Jesus, and just ran to the back of the bus.
So funny.
And you gave her your seat.
Eventually, I wanted to give it to her. I intended to. I was sitting down waiting for her to make her way down, and she came up, and I went, sit. And she goes, obrigada. She was very loud and turista, and she was all upset because of all the tourists.
I can understand that. I mean, you're trying to get about your day, and you have all these strangers of your city, infringing on what you're doing. So the visuals of Lisbon are spectacular. It's everywhere you go, every turn you go. One of the biggest disappointments we had, though, was I could not find anywhere online a map of some of the beautiful graffiti of Lisbon. It really, really disappointed me from the point of view of, I love the street art of Lisbon and the pictures I've seen on Instagram and other places. And it was hugely disappointing to not be able to find that stuff. There is some, we found some of it by accident, just by us wandering around. and happening to see this stuff in the Alfama, making a left-hand turn, and oh shit, look at that picture there. Here's a shot of some of the street art that we found literally just by accident. We're happened to be walking down here, and you turn and look up this hill or look down this hill, and there was this really cool murals. And
you just come across it.
But there was no way to find out where this stuff was. There was no map that said, go down here or at this address you'll find this particular piece of street art. And that was really disappointing to me, because I was so looking forward to seeing some of the stuff that we had seen online.
I put a bunch of it on Instagram, but I guess it's not here.
Well, you didn't send it to me.
It's on Starting Point Photography.
Yes, but you didn't send it to me.
Oh, sorry.
So I could put it in here.
Sorry.
I had some of it. I thought I had some of it in here. I think one of the funniest things we saw was this street busker, street vendor.
Oh, you guys.
With this guy, the look on his face. I mean, his face is just...
Oh, my God, give me some money.
That's right.
You got to help me here.
But then...
And his dog.
Look on his dog's face was the exact same.
His dog, it's true. He must have trained this little dog, and his eyes would look up. He was irresistible.
They were both very cute.
And his little head would turn with the little people who put the coins in the little container.
And he wasn't a bad accordion player either.
Oh, no, I love the piano accordion.
Yeah, this poor dog he's over this. He was so over this.
He's like, makes me come out and do this every freaking day.
One of the things that we were talking about, the light in Lisbon, and this is probably one of my favorite shots of Melissa, especially with her hair catching the golden yellow of the sunlight. It's just spectacular pictures.
Beautiful light.
Easy to take good pictures of people in that kind of light. It's it's like dead simple. Just point your camera at them. Mm-hmm. Have them stand so the sunlight's on their face. Take a picture.
Yeah.
And you've got something that's Instagram worthy. It's just spectacular.
Yes. No.
So nice. The other aspect of it too that was a lot of fun was posing Melissa in this wonderful light. You as I've always said, when you are shooting in this kind of situation, you want to have an idea. You want to pre-visualize your shot. You want to know what you're going to do before you do it. And like I said to the class when we were there, one of the things you can do when you have a model is professional models, know what poses to do, and they'll do them automatically. But your friends and family and loved ones aren't models, so you have to direct them. So it was really easy to have Melissa stand with that light, not me just say, Melissa, look over that way. And she would, and because my camera was ready to take the picture, I took the shot of her. Or Melissa, look at me. And it's so easy to make her laugh. I just made a silly joke, and I get this beautiful shot of my wife giggling over something. But with that light, you're guaranteed of getting good images. You're just wonderful, wonderful shots.
Show the one I took of you at the monastery.
No, I don't have that one.
You do so. You do.
Wait. So here's another example of just the gorgeous light that you'll find. This was up at the South George Castle.
Oh, I loved it up there.
We were up there for a sunset, and it's another one that's difficult to get to. MacMan was talking about going to Cintra. We'll talk about that in a second. But the walk up to the up to the South George Castle is a steep climb. Bunch of switchback roads to get up there. The signage isn't the greatest.
No.
It's a little hard.
Oh, it's not like it's official way to South George. Like, you've got to kind of wind your way around the Alfalma district. And then you get up there and you go in, and it's so old. Yeah. Like, and all of the tiles have lifted up, and everyone's tripping and giggling and laughing. And then like there's no... I love the attitude. It's like, well, if you trip or if you sit on here and fall over, it's too bad. Right. And then we're going to have a lovely wagon up there that sells wine. So everybody's drinking, and I love it.
There's actually a wagon at the top called Wine with a View.
I know. People are just sitting there getting tiddly. And there's steps that are almost vertical to climb up.
And smooth from 5 centuries of people walking on them.
People walking. And I love...
No guardrails.
I love, like in Canada, it would have been nuts.
That's right.
With safety precautions and cordoned off, and not there.
I'm just getting some shots, showing folks some of the shots that we got from the castle. One of the things that I talk about in the class, is when you have shots, I guess, with something in the foreground and then something in the background, you can focus on both. Take one picture with your camera focused on the background or the foreground, and the other in reverse. So in this shot, I focused on that's the big square down the commercial plaza, and then in the next shot, I focused on the cannon to give you a different view. The cannon's in focus, the background's out of focus. In this case, the background's in focus, the cannon's out of focus. And it's really easy to do real quick. This probably took 5 seconds. Just focus on that point, shoot, focus on that point, and shoot. So you end up with a couple of interesting different shots from different angles. The other thing we noticed when we were up at the Castle South George was the neighborhood. I mean, this was someone's courtyard we were looking into from the top of the castle.
Yeah, this was the wealthy neighborhood.
Yes.
There were beautiful places up by the castle that you looked down upon and thought, oh, okay, this is where some people with money live.
MacMan says, did it rain while you were there? No, we got lucky. There was no rain whatsoever the entire time we were there.
MacMan
I'm sorry, Monty. Where's your picture of you and Melissa on that tile bench you kept talking about? Didn't get a shot of the tile bench per se because we were up there when it was very, very crowded. I think I got a 1 or 2 shots.
Which one?
Remember that bench that we never saw any pictures of someone sitting on it?
Oh, yes, but you did take a picture of me on that bench.
I did, but not of the bench is what I'm saying. I'm trying to find...
Oh, that was a very, very beautiful, but a very, very busy area. Yeah. And also, which I was disappointed, it was very dirty. There was so much garbage up there. It was just filthy.
There was an area where you could sit and sort of dangle your feet over the edge, and people throwing all their garbage down there.
Oh, and they had sort of a pool up there that was filthy, like a cesspool. They needed to clean it up. I'm not quite sure why they hadn't yet, but...
We spent one full day in a town, I think about a 45-minute train ride away from the center of Lisbon called Sintra. A beautiful, beautiful...
MacMan and Shawn nearly died.
Oh, my God.
Walking uphill with nerds.
We so nearly died. Sintra was the summer palace of the royalty back in the day. And there's a whole history to why Sintra is the way it is. But it's a very pretty spot. The problem is getting there. There's not a single piece of transportation that will take you from the front gate of the Sintra Palace lands to the Sintra Palace. Your ass is walking. And it's pretty steep. That day, we walked the equivalent of 44 stories, 44 floors. So that's how steep it was. It was pretty much the same 10, 12 kilometers that we walked regularly, 7 to 8 miles. But it was 44 floors, and it was kind of hard.
Even though there was like an 80-year-old woman with high heels that did it and talked at the same time. You have to admit, she was quite a...
She was a character.
She was a character.
I'll give you that. So we had a lovely little tour guide who drove us around in her van. Ariana, who stopped and we got this picture. And then Ariana wasn't walking up. She's like, hey, I'm dropping you guys off here. Walk up. So you walk up and you're huffing and you're puffing, your knees hurt and you're drinking water and it's just unpleasant. And you come around a corner and you look up and you go, oh, that's kind of cool. And you get closer to this beautiful, vibrant spot. There's a shot of Melissa. I love that arch that she's standing in front of. The beautiful yellow of the one of the towers, and the inside of some of these places were just spectacularly beautiful. We unfortunately, sorry, this is a different place. This is Montserrat. This is another place we went to, Montserrat. And you liked Montserrat more than you liked Sintra,
I did.
The Pena Palace, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. The gardens, the gardens were, I could have just wandered the gardens for days. They didn't have camellia bushes. They had camellia trees.
Yeah, trees. That's right.
They had aloe vera that looked like it was from Jurassic Park.
They had aloe vera that was 8 feet high. Massive leaves on the aloe vera.
The gardens were, and what the gardens consisted of was that it was a British gentleman that had collected plants from all over the world. The flora and fauna was from New Zealand, Australia, everywhere, and it was just fascinating collection of flora and fauna that was in the gardens.
One of the missions we were on when we went to Lisbon was to make sure that we got some of this tile that you see all over the buildings of Lisbon. Beautiful tile work. It was spectacular in some of these buildings, not just the stuff on the floors, but in just random places on random buildings that I just utterly loved how a lot of these homes were decorated with these motifs and these styles and these colors, and not for any reason other than that's just what they did. That's just the way they decorated their homes. This wasn't a tourist home. This wasn't
the buildings, yeah.
It was just the building had these gorgeous tiles all over the place, and it was just wonderful to see. Sorry, here's the picture that Melissa wanted me to show you guys of me in the
Mr. King doing his thing.
Hieronymus Monastery. And so we were on a mission to find tiles. It turned out, though, that the tiles we found were different from the tiles that we saw on the street. We were expecting, we have our kitchen is done up in these little fake tiles. We can't afford to redo our kitchen with real tiles. We found these pseudo tiles online. We love them.
They look fantastic.
They look fantastic. So that was one of our missions, was to find this tile. And then we started looking around, and we couldn't find anything that really jazzed us up. One of the things that Melissa was looking for was address tiles for the front of the house. And we found in a little street market these wonderful number tiles, and our number is 752. They're about that thin, and so we're going to stick this on the side of the house.
That was the market under the arch.
Market under the arch. But then we went to Lisbon Cork by Nunes is the name of the company, and we found these beautiful. Am I showing you right?
We got different color styles.
These beautiful tiles. That what we loved most about them is that they're tactile. They're three-dimensional. The tiles actually, it's not just a flat painted on thing. This is a plaster cast of these tiles.
I mean, the variety of colors and designs were just we looked and looked and looked. Actually, it didn't take us that long to find our theme and what we wanted and the colors. But there were hundreds of them. So that's just 3 of the ones that we chose.
And helped with a beautiful Vanessa.
Beautiful Vanessa was there by us. Well, she wasn't by our side. We chose, and we were chatting away with her, and she was really enjoying us. So,
of course, we're delightful.
Oh, you didn't show. We'll have to show everybody our lovely bread, oil, and vinegar bowls. Should I go get?
Of course, you should go get. Of course, you should go get those things. So yeah, we really, really loved just wandering the streets. It wasn't even a matter of going on a history tour or anything else along those lines. Just wandering the streets to see what we could see randomly, just as you walked around, to see what kind of colors and what kind of. I love the fact I said before, the fact that these trees in these little neighborhoods, they left obviously they didn't leave all the trees, but they left so many of the trees for people to continue to enjoy and use. So Melissa We're still fighting over this, by the way, if you ever want to, if you're ever curious. So they had these beautiful, it's called Lisboa by Nunes. So we weren't quite sure what these were for to begin with. And then the beautiful Vanessa explained this is for
oil
and balsamic vinegar. So you know how you dip your bread in these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And we got a couple of these.
And we love to make bread, and we do love that sort of oil and vinegar thing going on.
Except, and this is where the fighting happens, Melissa wants to use these things as a spoon rest on the stove.
Not these things. Vanessa, because she fell in love with us, she said, you guys just go take one. And we were like, oh, you mean we'll take one and we can get another one 25% off sort of thing? And she said, no, go take one.
Take one.
She just said, take one. So Shawn and I went and picked out the second one. And I said, oh, well, we can use one on our stovetop to rest our spoons on when we're cooking.
And I disagree with that entirely.
And then it can be shown off.
No.
So, yes, thank you, Monty.
Well, of course Monty takes your side.
Of course he's going to.
Such a kiss ass. Jeez.
No, he's not.
He
What is
is.
that? We're going to use one. The other one just sits in the cupboard till we get the oil and vinegar out.
So,
use them for anything. See, that's right. Anything.
MacMan has posted a picture. That's me standing next to one of the aloe vera
That's
plants.
aloe vera.
Hang on, make sure I'm showing this to you folks correctly. So that's the aloe vera plant.
Yeah.
And I'm 6'3".
Yeah. So
Look at the size of that
snap
thing.
some of that and rub it on a bug bite.
Or
sunburn. It's good for sunburn too.
Massive.
Yeah.
We didn't believe it was aloe vera because it was just so huge.
Yeah, Shawn said, is this aloe vera? And
Yeah.
I went, no.
Can't
and then I
be.
went up closer and went, yes, it is.
It is aloe vera.
Oh, the gardens were spectacular.
What else did we enjoy about? What I will say, downside, upside, great weather. Wasn't too hot. It was warm when you're humping your ass up the side of a mountain, but it was okay. Not too cool in the evenings. You get a little chilly, but you bring a sweater. You're okay. But was not impressed by the food. Very disappointed in the food.
So
I was
disappointed.
so looking forward to having seafood and cod and the sardines, all this kind of great stuff. Mm-hmm. And we had that stuff, but it was fairly bland and uninterestingly prepared. And most of the food was like that. Yeah,
they did their salmon like spot on, absolutely delicious, the salmon. But we tried. We tried to stick with traditional food. Yep. We were very.
We had this stuff called traditional Portuguese soup.
Oh my gosh, you guys! It was like the dishwater. It was sad.
It was oily water with 3 pieces of white bread soaked in it and an egg.
and so Shawn and I tried. We tried to be respectful.
We did.
Because of one of the last ditch efforts that we made, because we started carrying around bread and pate and cheeses and to save money and not have to be vulnerable to, oh my God, we're so starving, we've got to go eat something.
Well, no. Yes, we saved money, but that's not the goal. That I like to eat that way when I travel.
Oh, we loved that. Yeah.
Just a bag of bread and cold cuts and oranges and fruit and veggies. And I'd like to eat, especially
because then we got to go to the grocery store and experience the Portuguese grocery store.
And especially like during the heat of the day when I don't want to have to find a restaurant that's at the right price and that kind of, no, just we sat down on a church step
or wherever we sat at Sal George Castle. I made us dinner up there. So we'd go to this place, and I said, Shawn, we looked in the window one night, and it was just, there's nothing great about it, like a big diner.
Yeah.
Packed. I mean, to the brim with local people, look at like this, not touristy. And we thought, well, we'll try there. They've got to have great food there. And this is, so you sort of get packed in with everybody else, and everyone's sort of like, you can hear the guy next to you chewing. Yeah. And that's where we tried this Portuguese soup, and we went.
It said traditional Portuguese soup in the menu. We thought,
it was like, okay,
let's try that.
Let's do it. Horrible.
Turns out traditional Portuguese soup is soggy bread and dishwater.
Terrible. We thought it was. Is this the dishwater? And then the food there was.
And then I ordered the mixed grill, and the meat was mostly unidentifiable. The sausage was good, But the other meat, I literally have no idea what it was. I don't know if it was. I literally don't know whether it was chicken or beef.
Right.
That's how indistinguishable it was.
Right.
And what did you have? You had.
I had salmon because I thought, because I love anything fish, the same as Shawn. But it was so, I couldn't even eat it all.
Yeah.
It was too much. It was soaked in oil.
Yeah.
They love their oil. Everything was that. That's hilarious. MacMan said that he would get back and went over to McDonald's. Oh dear. So that was too bad. The custard tarts, amazing, amazing. Yes,
and
please.
Interestingly enough, so the first day we were there, the coffee shop right next to us was called, I'm going to butcher the name, a Brasilerie. And it's one of the most famous coffee shops in Lisbon because the famous Portuguese writer and poet Fernando Pessoa, that's where he would hang out. And there's a bronze statue of him outside. You can sit next to him and get your pictures taken with Fernando Pessoa. So we went there. First morning, I go to get coffee, and they said, we don't do takeout coffee. I'm like, what do you mean you don't do takeout coffee? Starbucks is closed.
My wife is upstairs waiting for coffee.
So I got 3 espresso shots. And, oh yeah, 3 of those tarts too. So we go up to the room, we have the tart, and we eat the tart, and we go, oh, so good. So good. So then we go to the the Belém Tower, and the most famous pastry shop in Lisbon is Pastéis de Belém. And it's the one where there's a lineup of tourists just out the door.
Yeah.
And you're going to wait half an hour to get your pastries, unless you walk inside. And you walk inside, and there's literally seating for 400.
There's room after room after room. It's quite lovely, covered in black and blue and white tile.
So if you go to Lisbon, don't stand in line. Go inside.
Go in.
And we had their pastéis de Belém, not pastéis de Natal, which is the other stuff. Because apparently this is the original recipe. It was bought from the monks in the Dalrymple monastery in behind the pastéis de Belém. And they did taste different.
Oh, yes. Each custard tart we had was quite different to each other.
The Belém ones were delicious, but they tasted different from the ones at the coffee shop.
Yeah. The Belém ones were, the phyllo pastry was so hot, it exploded, but it hurt your palate. It had sharp bits on it.
Yeah, it was very sharp. And then we'd heard another pastry shop was just up the street from our hotel, Mantegueria. Sorry. And people said it's better than Pastéis de Belém. We're like, well, I got to try it. We went there every morning.
That was our place.
They
had the best ones.
They had the best ones.
Yeah, the first one we had was so sweet. It was like caramel, the first custard tart we ever had there. Then the Pastéis de Belém, which the phyllo pastry was just a bit too hard. And then the last one where we go every morning was absolutely delicious.
And even better with a little bit of cinnamon on top.
Yes, Shawn likes cinnamon on his. And yes, Monty, the bookstore, the oldest bookstore in the world.
The oldest bookstore. I just love the idea that we went into the oldest bookstore in the world. I have the photographic
It was
proof.
very moving.
It really was.
It was a very beautiful experience to go in.
So here's a picture of Melissa doing.
Yes, there's our lunch on the church steps.
Literally sitting on the steps of a church having lunch.
Watching everybody thinking that they could go to São Jorge through the entranceway that was right next to us. Following Google.
So there it is. There's the certificate. Established in 1732. Bertrand Bookshop, located in Lisbon, Portugal, is the oldest operating bookshop in the world. And it's a really, really pretty little space, too.
It's beautiful.
Really cool.
You can see the worn ceiling there.
Tunnel all the way through. And what I love about it is that it's not touristy. These are 95% these are Portuguese books.
Yep.
They do not cater to tourists in that way. I was fully expecting to see a bunch of American magazines and
it is
English
a local
books.
bookstore.
It's a local bookstore. I thought that was very, very cool. That even though it's in the heart of a touristy district, it was still a very local bookstore.
Very low key. Even the little cafe at the back, which was his room. Whose room was it? Was it the poets? Who was
one of the poets? Yeah.
One of the poets. It was very low key. Nothing fancy.
We walked into the church. It turned out that our hotel location was very good. Hotel 3 out of 5. 3 stars out of 5, maybe.
They could have done way better.
But the location of our hotel was really cool. We were right across the street from a subway right across from a subway station, although we never took the subway. The buses we need to get places were very, very close. We could easily hop on a tram or a bus. The famous coffee shops was right next door. Famous pastry shop was half a block, 2 blocks, or a block up the street. Right across the street from the hotel was this little church. Little Catholic church, and I'm not religious at all, but I love churches. I love going into churches, especially European cathedral type places. So we go in, and the first thing I hear is, psst, psst, psst. I look over, and this little tiny itty bitty old Portuguese lady, who I'm going to assume was a nun, although she wasn't wearing nun stuff, looked at me with my hat, and went, take your hat off. I'm like, oh shit, I'm in a church. Sorry. I turned to Melissa and said, take your hat off. And the woman says, Melissa,
no, not the woman. Not the woman. I was like, yeah.
That's not fair. So put my hat back on.
No, he didn't.
I did not. And we walked in. It was a beautiful little church.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
And just looked around. I love the iconography of churches. I love the feeling of a church, the what it represents, the good that it represents, not obviously the bad. And then I guess she liked us because she pointed us over and she brought us around the corner to show a nativity scene that was just incredibly ornate.
So ornate.
Incredibly ornate and handmade and just beautiful. And then she let us walk about halfway down the church, and she turned and pointed up, and there was this amazing,
with much pride. It's almost like she's like, look at our pipe organ.
This huge pipe organ above the main stair, the main entrance. You wouldn't have seen it unless you walked into the church and then turned around 180 degrees. And I just love that about these kinds of places. These gorgeous, even the small churches, but the big churches are incredibly spectacular. This was the National Cathedral. These are the doors of the National Cathedral. That was another spectacular building to go into.
And I have to say that when we went to the monastery, when we walked into the church part of the monastery, it took my breath away. I actually started to cry.
Yep.
And I could not believe the beauty of it.
And the thing is, too, that particular, it's the Geronimus Monastery. That particular monastery church is not that ornate when it comes to European cathedrals.
But maybe that was what it was about it. It was so simple, yet stunningly beautiful.
Yeah, it was a wonderful space to wander around in.
Oh.
I'm a huge fan of these. I think they're called flying buttresses or flying arches. I love the visuals of these. If you're looking, Dave D, that church is the tomb of Vasco da Gama. Damn it! I knew I was missing something in that church. I love we're always talking about leading lines in photography, and arches are great for drawing your eye through things. And these flying buttress type arches are just spectacular. Got some really, really lovely pictures of that space. I really enjoyed being in the monasteries called the cloisters of the monastery, and it was really had a lot of fun taking pictures in there, but also just walking around and just feeling the space and being in that space. Unfortunately, I'm using unfortunately using the new version of Lightroom CC, which I'm not used to, and there's a whole bunch of different things they change on it. It pisses me off. Stop doing that. What else did we do that was enjoyable?
Oh my goodness. Belém Tower was a good day when we all went there together, and then up to...
One of the problems was because we were sick, we really didn't have a lot of energy to do more than one or two things in a day.
No.
Plus, I'm writing the Inside Apple newsletter at the same time. So between 3 and 5 each day, Melissa napped.
I just slept. I just passed out. Shawn said he never seen me pass out like that before.
She slept. But I still had to write the newsletter. So
Shawn had to work.
We had to go back to the hotel between 3 and 5 so I could get the newsletter researched and sent out. So, and then after that, you're kind of like, oh, you know how when you walk a whole lot and then you sit down, you're like, I don't want to get up.
But
So
we would go out.
We would, but I didn't want to do. You didn't really feel like adventuring afterwards. So I could definitely see that we missed a bunch of things that we wanted to get to, that we probably would have gotten to if it hadn't been for that 3 to 5 break right there.
We were too sick to get the car.
And that was the other thing is, we didn't make it to Nazaré because that was the Saturday. We built that into the schedule. And because Melissa was too sick,
I was just so sick
that day, we couldn't have gone there.
Yeah.
So we never got to Nazaré, never got to Cabo de Roca, a bunch of other places. But considering how sick we were, literally shivering and freezing, we didn't do too bad. We got some. You got some great shots. Melissa got some shots that were so good that I deleted my shots of it because they weren't as good as hers. You took a couple shots of murals that I looked at yours, looked at mine, and went delete. It's not as good as what my wife took, so I can't post that because that'd just be embarrassing. It's definitely a place, a city I would love to go back to, and I would like to have the opportunity to explore even more of it.
Oh, it is beautiful.
Not just from the city point of view, but also from the country point of view.
Yes.
The other thing that surprised us were the Portuguese people were not overly friendly.
They're not an exuberant people.
They are not.
They're quite dour in a way. Not unfriendly.
Yeah,
they're
not
just
unfriendly.
not. I mean, when we first went to the hotel, on that first checking in, we got into this little elevator, and I said, well, Shawn, I said, we did not get a connection then that I would have appreciated. Shawn said, oh, they just did their thing. That was okay. And I said, no, we didn't. They didn't connect. It was just very... they were not like, hello, welcome to Lisbon.
Oh, no.
It was just like, okay, off you go.
They
never got any better.
We went to the same coffee shop for 6 days in a row, 5 days in a row, and they never once acted as if, oh, you're back kind of thing.
No,
It was just
I mean, Dave and Ann had that a little bit.
Dave and Ann had a good connection with their coffee shop folks.
Yeah.
But for us, we didn't at all.
No, and even the folks at the hotel, sometimes they wouldn't even look at you.
Yeah.
You'd walk by and they didn't even say hello. How was your day?
To a certain degree disturbing. For example, they had some issue with their key cards, the card you put in the slot. And at least every 2 days, day and a half, we had to get these things reset. And so you'd come downstairs, and the woman, I know for a fact in this one instance, didn't see me come off the elevator. I walked up and I said, key card's not working, room 502. And she went... hand me the key card and went away.
Yeah. You could have been anyone.
I could have been anyone. I could have said room 409.
Yeah.
And she didn't care. She wasn't, and it wasn't a staff member I'd seen before.
Yeah.
It wasn't someone who would check me in. It wasn't somebody who knew who I was, that I was even staying in the hotel. And yet she gave me a key card to room 502 without checking.
Really checking.
Even my name.
Yeah. They did that a bit more with me when I had to reset.
Which was a little...
But they just weren't... they were just more dour than what I thought they were going to be, which was fine. It wasn't an uncomfortable feeling. It was just, okay.
And yet
they didn't really want to connect.
We had some people, Felipe, the waiter in the hotel, the Tivoli Hotel, who fell over himself trying to help us out and gave us a handwritten list of like 7 places to go see, the best places, the best miradors, the best viewpoints, the best sightseeing locations in Lisbon, and he was a wonderful guy.
He was. That's true.
Some people were, but for the most part, they were at the. I don't know if I'd say dour. I'd say just neutral. There was nobody who seemed interested or excited in you being there. And
no,
maybe it's a bit pompous to think that way, but I know from my experience in other places, Florence and London and even Paris. They at least showed more of an interest in you, if only to get more tourist dollars out of you. You know what I mean?
Yes, I mean there was some exuberance from young people that worked for the restaurants in the alleyways, trying to get you to come in. There was some of them were very exuberant, and there was a lot of funny connection with them. But otherwise, in general, no. Yeah. I mean, I don't expect a fuss.
Yeah, me neither.
But when I got there to the hotel, I expected more And I was sort of like, oh,
Yep.
okay. Yep. And there was nothing. So,
but that being said, the food not being anywhere near spectacular, completely average, and the people in general being fairly neutral, I would still go back in a heartbeat.
Oh, I would go back.
I would absolutely love to go back and take another group back there with the experience we have now. We know there's there was this glove shop, Olivia Ulysses, that was literally 2 people couldn't fit in the glove shop. It was a 1-person store. It was a person behind the counter, and then excuse me. There was a person behind the counter, and you walked in, and you sort of pointed to the glove. The room was smaller than this desk. But they had some gorgeous gloves there.
Oh, they had tailors, and they had all kinds of old fashion kind of shop. And I got my cover for my phone.
Oh, that's right, you did.
Yeah, I got. It's like a clear cover. It's very cool. It's kind of this soft, clear, like this.
Want to hold up the microphone or hold up to the camera?
I'm sorry. Here, it's like this. Better. I like
got that cover. At the Apple reseller, not the Apple store.
No,
there are no Apple stores in
Apple
Portugal.
Stores in Portugal.
But they were very nice and friendly too.
They were nice.
So yeah, I would definitely go back. The next starting point photography workshop is going to be here in Vancouver this coming September. That's going to be interesting because this is a city and area we know much more than obviously than the unfamiliarity of Lisbon. So hopefully it'll be even better. I have to send a huge thank you and shout out to Dave MacMan, to Dave Dykestall and his lovely wife Ann, to Deborah and Mark, a couple from Bakersfield, California. Obviously, it wouldn't have been possible without them. This was the inaugural Starting Point Photography Workshop, a thing I've been working on doing thinking about for 10 years and planning for 5. And so for those 5 people to take a leap of faith and join us in a foreign country on a foreign continent and assume I know what I'm talking about and let me teach them and let me show them around a city I'm not familiar with at all. I'm honored at the trust you put in me, and I really appreciate it. Now, thank you 5 people very much. I can't say enough about how lovely everybody was.
And understanding Shawn was just not himself at all.
And hopefully the idea of this is that we will build on this, and then maybe in 6 months' time you'll come, or a year time, you'll come on the advanced trip where we'll learn more about shooting with our DSLRs, more advanced concepts and ideas. That's the goal, is to build on this. But I definitely want to speak directly to you 5 people. Don't forget to keep practicing. All of the effort that we went through in our time in Lisbon and your money that you spent is going to be wasted if you don't practice what we talked about, if you don't think about photography, if you don't go out and do photography. It's going to be a waste of time, energy, and money on your part. And again, for you 5, we are photo buddies, so please, if you have any questions about anything photography related, use me as a resource to try to figure out the issues that you're having. I'll do my best to help you. That's it, folks, for tonight's show. If you have any questions, any comments, as always, send us emails to Shawn@yourmaclifeshow.com or to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. Until next week, as always, I've been Shawn King.
I'm Melissa King.
And you've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya!